good evening, everyone. It's nice to have you here. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Listen, I'm Phillip Glick. I'm the rector at St. Andrews. It's my pleasure to welcome you here this evening on behalf of the North Dare Ministerial Association with the great support of the Mano El Hermano. And just really such a pleasure to have you here tonight. We have cookies back here, we have water, we have juice, we have restrooms down the hall, and we've got wonderful folks here, and you can get to know each other, and I hope you take that opportunity. So, immigration has been much in conversation lately. Been in the news, you know, I kind of think of it as the last year and a half, but actually, as I think about it, when I first started ministry 30 years ago, it was much in the news. And so it's been around for 30, 40, 50 years, and probably much longer than that when it really comes down to it. With all of this conversation going on, I found myself talking to people and not really knowing what I was talking about. I was just missing information. I didn't know enough to talk about it intelligently. And I don't know if any of you have felt that same way. It's hard to get good information and good facts. You hear one thing one place, something else somewhere else. And so as we began talking about that, among folks at St. Andrews and then at the Ministerial Association, we all felt like we just needed more information. And so that's part of why we're doing this evening, and part of what brought that about. My hope is that you'll gain more knowledge this evening, and that knowledge, to any of you, am I the only one who has fears? You know? So my hope is, and prayer is that knowledge replaces fear. And that my other hope is, and maybe this is primary, that we grow more compassionate as a people. Exodus 23, verse 9. I didn't think I was going to find myself quoting the book of Exodus tonight. You shall not oppress the resident alien. Why? The Lord says, you know the heart of an alien. You've been there before. For you were aliens in the land of Egypt. Elsewhere it says, love the alien, love the stranger as yourself. Interesting. Matthew 25, verse 25. When you welcome a stranger, you welcome me, said Jesus to his disciples, but also to the larger world as well. And then this surprised me. In Peter's first letter, he writes to the church and he says, he refers to the early church community as aliens and exiles in the land of Gentiles. So how can we have compassion? Well, in some ways, if we've been there before ourselves, or just hearing people's stories and getting to know folks. And so along those lines, I am ever so grateful. Amma, Frimpong, where are you? Amma, thank you for here. Thank you for being where I can find you. Amma is from she's the executive director and an attorney for the Mano El Hermano. And she's going to give us an overview this evening, both a general overview and then something about the Outer Banks. And so thank you, Amma. Sheriff Doughtie, thank you for being here, sir. It's wonderful and a pleasure. I appreciate it. Good to have you. Sheriff Doughtie is going to be talking about law enforcement and its role and with immigration as well. Tess Judge describes herself as a citizen. Do any of you actually know Tess? So, Tess, it's good to have you here, and thank you for speaking on immigration and its effect on the economy of the Outer Banks. David Morris. Hi. Sitting next to him is Jesse Luce. Well, yeah, almost. David is minister at the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Outer Banks. Jessica is retired. English is a second language teacher for 4th grade, and she'll be speaking to us. They'll both be helping lead lead a conversation of what we can do as individuals and as churches in our communities. Wayne Berry. Thank you, Wayne. Wayne is a member of the Ministerial Association, and he's going to help field questions at the very end of tonight's presentations, which we anticipate taking another 54 minutes, because I've gone over 1 minute already. And but Wayne will help field those questions, so we'll have a half hour for questions and answers. Before we go any further, let's take a moment to remember that we are in the presence of God. And I will offer this prayer for the human family. Oh God, you have made us in your own image and redeemed us through Jesus, your Son. Look with compassion on the whole human family. Take away the arrogance and hatred which infect our hearts. Break down the walls that separate us. Unite us in bonds of love. And work through our struggle and confusion to accomplish your purposes on earth. That in your good time all nations and races may serve you in harmony around your heavenly throne. This we pray for the sake of your love. Amen. Would you please come forward? And I think you need the, you're going to hand the microphone.
Probably this is easiest because I need my hands when I talk. So. All right, well, good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you all so much for coming. This is a wonderful turnout. I want to also say thank you to St. Andrews and thank you to the North Dare Ministerial Association for setting this up. I think this is a very much needed forum. So thank you so much for, I forgot to punch door. So thank you so much for putting this together for us and for the community. I am apparently a very strict time limit, so I will try to be as efficient as I can, but I've also just had pizza and wine, so please bear with me. I might be a little off my game, but I'm just going to jump right in. A lot of what I'll talk about today will have to do with undocumented immigrants. Has anyone heard that phrasing? Does anyone use that phrasing? Do you know what that means? Undocumented immigrants. So first and foremost, what does that mean? Who is an undocumented immigrant? Plain and simple, that is someone who is in the United States without authorization. How does that happen? Usually that happens in one of two ways. Either, the classic way that we think about, someone just crossed the border unlawfully and is now in the United States here living. So, for example, someone from El Salvador crosses through Mexico and comes through the southern border and is now in the U.S. without proper authorization. So they're considered an undocumented immigrant. The other way that can come about is, which was my story, people who enter the country with proper authorization, with a visa, but it's a temporary visa. So it says that after some point in time, you have to leave the country. Well, if you don't leave the country, once your visa expires and you're supposed to be gone, you are now also considered an undocumented immigrant. So that was me. I came in 2003 on a tourist visa. I believe it maybe expired within 3 months, but here I am, right? And so between the time it expired and the time I became a lawful permanent resident, I was considered an undocumented immigrant. And that's the term that I will keep using. Notice I'm not calling people illegal aliens or illegals. That is not the proper term. I know we all hear it pretty much every day. We see it on the news. Some of us also use that phrasing, but that is not the proper phrasing. And so, I mean, I think that if we leave here tonight with nothing at all, I want us to, kind of be in the mindset of trying to shift, our language from using that term to phrasing, undocumented immigrants, okay? And the other thing that I also want to say before I begin, before I go to D, is that although I will be focusing on undocumented immigrants, although I think, you know, in the past I would have thought this went without saying, but in our current climate, I think it is very important to make sure everyone understands that not all foreign-born people who live in the United States are undocumented immigrants, okay? And to be more specific, not all brown people with an accent, or not all brown people who maybe don't speak English well enough, or, you know, are speaking Spanish or another language are undocumented immigrants. That is just not the case. An overwhelming, a whopping 44% of foreign-born people living in the U.S. are U.S. citizens, myself included, okay? And another whopping 27% of foreign-born people living in the U.S. are lawful permanent residents, meaning that they have green cards. So that's what, about 71% of people who, although they are not from here, they have been authorized to live here and you know, work here permanently for the rest of their lives. But you know, in our current climate, you know, you would watch TV and you know, you would think that every single person who's not from here is, you know, isn't supposed to be here. So so we have U.S. citizens, we have lawful permanent residents or green card holders, and then we also have undocumented immigrants, right, which I've explained. Well, we also have a few categories kind of in the middle that aren't here permanently, but they're also not undocumented. What am I talking about? For example, DACA holders. How many of you know about DACA? Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. Okay. Now, this was an executive order that was put in place June 5th, 2012 by President Obama, and I mean, you know, it said that people who had moved to the U.S. before they were the age of 16, they were physically present in the U.S. on June 5th, 2012. They had been living in the U.S. from 2007 on, and they had not committed any significant crime, could apply for a status that would essentially protect them from deportation. Okay, and then they had to renew this status every 2 years. So although it wasn't a permanent you know, status, it was still more than just a short-term temporary thing. They could actually work here. They could get driver's licenses, right? And you notice that I am using the past tense because, as many of you know, as of September 5th, 2017, DACA, as we know it, no longer exists because the administration has ended DACA. And we have no idea what is going to replace DACA. DACA was, there were about, or are about 800,000 DACA holders in the country, 27,000 DACA holders in the state of North Carolina. We have people on the Outer Banks living and working here that are on DACA status. So once that status expires, they're going to become undocumented immigrants, unless something is done by, you know, Congress or the administration, or, you know, unless something is done. But at this point, we have no idea what that something will be. Okay. Another category of semi-permanent, semi-temporary people are people that have a status called temporary protective status. Has anyone heard about that? That's lesser known. TPS is for, there are about 320,000 people total in this country that have TPS. I know for a fact on the Outer Banks there are I know personally there are about 5 that I know personally that have this status. And what that status is once again, it provides protection from deportation for people whose home countries are suffering, you know, war, natural disaster, things of that nature. And so the government says, okay, you know what, you're not here lawfully. We could send you back to your homes, but we won't do that because that would be considered Maine. So you are allowed to, stay here and work here until we feel that the situation in your home country is, fine. Well, TPS is under attack right now. Just last month, so there were 2,500 people from Nicaragua that had temporary protected status. Just last month, the administration ended temporary protected status for those Nicaraguans. And so they're facing, they have to leave at some point, or if they're found out, they're going to be deported. And of course, once their status ends, guess what? They're now considered undocumented immigrants, right? I believe it was last week, so there are 59,000 Haitians that had TPS. They received TPS after the 2010 earthquake. That was just announced, I believe it was last week, that has now ended. And so all Haitians that are in the country under TPS have to leave the country by July 2019. And then the biggie, Salvadorans, people from El Salvador. We have 200,000 people from El Salvador. A number of people on the Outer Banks have temporary protected status from El Salvador. And we find out next month whether or not their status will be ended as well, or whether that will be renewed and extended. So, just to, share the fact, once again, that not every brown person that is not from this country that lives here right now is undocumented. However, we do have a significant undocumented immigrant population in the country. Of the 43 million foreign-born people in this country, about 25% or 11 million of them are undocumented immigrants. And so, people often ask, they're like, well, people came in this country, they're now U.S. citizens, they have green cards, why can't this 25% of people, what is wrong with them? Why can't they get their lawful status, right? There's this there's this idea. So one thing I've learned about America and Americans is that we love lines, right? This is like one of the most orderly places in the world. We love our lines. We will get in line, at restaurants, the grocery store, everything, right? And so there's this mentality that immigration is the same way. Like, you just get in line and you wait your turn, and then when it's your turn, you get your paper. That's what we do. We stand in line, right? Well, that is not the case, right? And so people often ask, well, why don't they just get in line? The answer is that there is no first of all, there is no, single line that people can just get into to gain lawful status, to get their green cards. Second, a lot of people don't qualify for a line. One of the handouts that you have is this one. This is one of my favorite handouts to show people, and it's also one of the saddest ever, because this depicts the reality of our immigration system. If someone asks you, why don't they just get in line, just simply show them this and say, which line are you talking about, right? Because take a look at it. I mean, this is as complex as our system is, and this isn't even everything.
Does anyone need one of the handouts? We'll get them to you.
The reality is that, there are 4 main avenues through which people can get their green card. The most common is through family, through employment, through humanitarian means, and then through something that's called the diversity visa lottery. I'll work my way backwards. Diversity visa lottery, plain and simple, is a system that is in place for the U.S. to diversify its immigration pool. So it's very country specific. And I can tell you right now, Mexico is not one of the countries whose natives will, can qualify for diversity visas. Central American countries, no. So the diversity visa lottery truly benefits those from African countries and those from Eastern European countries. That's how my father got his green card, was through the diversity visa lottery. The second way that I mentioned, humanitarian means. Now we're talking refugees and asylees, victims of crime, victims of abuse. A lot of people do not qualify for that. And it's also very daunting because this avenue, which of course also has many, many lines within it, is very extensive, very invasive. To the process to be even considered a refugee. So refugees are people who are fleeing their home countries due to persecution on the basis of, sex, religion, race, political opinion, stuff like that. The process to even be considered a refugee by the Department of State takes at least 2 years. We're working with someone right now who first filed their case in 2015, and they have just now been given refugee status. And that's not even them entering the country yet. It's going to take even more time before they can actually enter the country. So, I mean, they're very extensive processes. I've been told I only have 2 minutes left, you guys. So anyway, I'll fast forward to employment. That is also a means. It is a nearly impossible means. I will tell you, I would never qualify to get an employment visa to be able to get my green card through that means. It is reserved for highly trained people with a skill that is in short supply in the United States. So, I mean, most of us in here would not qualify for that. We do have a few, we do have people that come into the Outer Banks with work visas, but those are temporary work visas, not permanent ones that would lead to green cards. And I believe Tess might be talking a little bit about that. And then finally, family. What I'm going to say about family is you have another handout as well. Family is usually the easiest way to get your green card. I will just point out this.
Who needs one of these? Just raise your hand if you need it. We'll get you around.
I think that adds like another 2 minutes.
Right here in front of me too.
I would just point you to this chart right here, okay? Now, if you are the spouse of a U.S. citizen, the unmarried child of a U.S. citizen, or the parent of a U.S. citizen over the age of 21, that's like the easiest way for you to try to get your green card. Outside of those categories, it is either impossible, or if you fit into one of these categories, you're looking at waits of about 20 years, okay? So when people talk about get in a line, and you say, oh my gosh, you know what, I have a brother who's a U.S. citizen, maybe I can get my green card through them. Awesome. Go ahead and file. If you look at the date on here under F4, the date on here is 22nd May 2004. What that means is that they are now processing cases that were filed on May 22nd, 2004, 13 years ago. Now, it's even harder if they are from Mexico. They are now processing cases for those kinds of cases that were filed for people from Mexico, for cases that were filed in October 1997, 20 years ago. So if people want to try to do things the right way and get in line, you're looking at waiting 20-something years. How many of you will wait 20 years for something? I can't wait 20 minutes to get lunch, right? And so when you're talking about people that are, in a situation in which they are, dealing with drug wars, gang violence, kidnapping, poverty, they're not going to sit there and wait 20 years. They might not even be alive tomorrow. And so this is why they take the risk to just cross the border and just see what awaits them over here. I will just, simply because I know Father Phil's going to kick me off probably.
I'll give you some about that.
All right, well, thank you, Doug. I'll take it.
Got your back.
No, I just want to say that, so yes, not every immigrant is an undocumented immigrant, but you know what? we do have undocumented immigrants. They are here. And the biggest impact, or I mean not the biggest impact, but a huge impact that it has on us here on the Outer Banks, because I think we have an even higher number than the 25% undocumented immigrant rate. I think we have a much higher rate than that. And one of the biggest impacts for us here is that we have a lot of people that are driving on our roads without valid North Carolina driver's licenses, and therefore without insurance. Because North Carolina will not give undocumented immigrants driver's licenses, okay? But people have to drive. They have to go to work, they have to take their kids to school, they have to go to the hospital. So we have people driving on our roads, breaking the law every day. Not because they want to, because they have to. And they know they're breaking the law. So we have people who are so fearful of local law enforcement that they can't look to local law enforcement to serve and protect them because they're afraid of local law enforcement. We don't want people who are fearful of local law enforcement. We want people to know that law enforcement is here for them, but that is not the case. We have a group of people here who are just constantly living in fear of, will this be the day that I get pulled over? Will this be the day that I get arrested? Will this be the day that ICE comes and picks me up and sends me to a detention center in the middle of nowhere and separates me from my family, right? We have people that are living in constant fear of being separated from their families. We have a community here that is living in the shadows out of fear, and out of that fear gets taken advantage of so much, it's ridiculous. We have a population here that is being charged exorbitant rent for rundown trailers, but they can't do anything about it because of the fear that they have of law enforcement, of the court system, and so they're just being taken advantage of. And we also have I think one of the biggest things for me is, and this leads to a misconception too, how many of you know that undocumented immigrants do not qualify for public benefits? If I see that on OBX Locals one more time, somebody blaming undocumented immigrants for being on welfare, they don't qualify for public benefits. They can attend the public schools, they can call 911, they are paying taxes and they are paying into Social Security that they can never draw from because they don't qualify for those benefits. So we have people that are in need of services but don't, but can't get the help that they need because they don't qualify for it. So in closing, I mean, I just want to say that yes, again, we do have undocumented immigrants on the Outer Banks, and what are we as a community going to do about it? Are we going to understand and recognize their situation? Are we going to be sympathetic and compassionate and help where we can? Or are we going to be hostile and treat them like they don't belong here? So once again, I think that this is very necessary, and I'm glad that we can have this conversation tonight. Thank you, Father.
I learned a lot already that I didn't know. It seems like sometimes law enforcement is kind of the last one to know exactly what is going on. With population or people, that we can help or that we can hurt. And she talked about law enforcement as being bad folks, kind of to the Hispanic community. I don't read everything that I would like to be able to read, but I honestly thought, I honestly thought there would be more Hispanic people in here tonight, which, that was who I was hoping would show up. So if they really had questions, they could see that we were earnest in what we were trying to do, and that we're not, out to hurt anybody. All we do is actually enforce the law that is given to us. And truthfully, we would not treat them in any way different than we treat the people we actually see every day. no matter the color or what they are. This is our mission statement. It says the Dare County Sheriff's Office's primary mission is the protection of the lives and property of the citizens of and visitors to Dare County. To that end, we will deliver professional, effective, and responsive law enforcement, detention, court security, and communication services. Our approach to these duties will be community-based. We will make ourselves available to respond to citizens' needs. The Dare County Sheriff's Office will serve all people with respect, fairness, and sensitivity. We will accomplish this mission with integrity, honor, and commitment. We will provide a fair, stable, and friendly working environment for our deputies, detention officers, telecommunications, and clerical staff. We will cultivate good working relationships with other public and private service organizations. Together, we will endeavor to make every contact with the public one that places us in close partnership with our citizens and visitors. We will do our part to make Dare County a better, safer place to live, work, and visit. Now that encompasses exactly what she's talking about. If we can't do that, then I'm in the wrong business, and vote me out when I run again when I sign in February. Because that's my job. That's our job. Let me tell you what we do, so you know. I looked up the way we don't target any individuals at all. And they don't come into our site unless they are arrested. And at that point, we still don't know exactly whether they're the people that she talks about, undocumented, or if they have some kind of visa or what they have. We don't ask for green cards. We're not concerned about that. If we're taking them to, if we arrest them, we carry them to jail. Everybody that we carry to jail is fingerprinted. And when we fingerprint, it's direct. That goes directly to the system. ICE will pick up on that. They look for those things. If that set of fingerprints comes up, and it comes up to being undocumented or an illegal or some crime that has been committed, they will actually put a detainer. They will call us and let us know. They will put a detainer on the person that it is. And we still wouldn't know that because we would be gone from the jail by then, but our jail staff would know, what was going on. And they have ICE, once they are tried and taken care of, whatever they do, if they're convicted and they're still in jail, ICE would have 48 hours to come and pick them up. At that point, they're still going to get a trial. Now, you correct me if I'm wrong, because I honestly don't know. We never know what happens to them when they leave us. But they would have another trial. They would be taken to another location where they would actually have a court trial to make sure that, this was the person that's, that they are actually looking for, that they are actually here in the United States with some violation. And at that point, whatever the court or judge, whichever that would be, a judge would, see fit to do with them, then under whatever law they do, they would send them back to where they were from. And that's the way, those things are dealt with. She was talking about, actually, we do stop a lot of people that don't have driver's license. And then, that first contact, the driver's license, that's not going to get you a trip to the Dare County Jail. So nobody's going to have any idea, at that point, if you're documented, undocumented, or what you are. Now, if you're driving while your license are revoked, if you've been caught, once before, and your license are revoked, then that's going to get you a trip to the Dare County Detention Center. At that point, they'll be fingerprinted, and if that should show up, then yes, definitely, ICE would know, and they would put a detainer on you if they wanted to. And then, once they were advised, they have 48 hours after everything is done, and that's it. You can't hold them over 48 hours, that's the time limit. If ICE wouldn't get here in that length of time, then they would be set free to go right back to whatever they were doing. And as far as we know, they don't, actually draw any kind of other paperwork up, to come back and get them, in the community that they live in. Which is something that sounds like to me, what I'm saying, that's what they worry about, that they think, that, hey, Dare County Sheriff's Office or law enforcement is going to gather together And every name we have that's an illegal, you know, we're going to rush out with ICE and go get them. That's not going to happen, not yet. Now, I'm not going to say it's not going to happen because I don't have any idea of what, you know, is going to be done with the federal government and how they're going to make a decision as to what they're going to do. But I've been doing this for a long, long time, and we've been here for, I've been here since, you know, all this stuff has come up, you know, in the past, and we have never seen that. We actually used to have 2 officers in our administration that actually were a part of ICE that could enforce the federal law, you know, that was there, and it helped us, you know, do things when the people were really being picked up, and actually it was a whole lot quicker than it is now. Now, I would tell you that I think there's 13 people in our detention center right now that are actually being detained for ICE, that are awaiting trial. And if they are convicted, you know, then ICE has 48 hours to come and get them. They'll be advised that that's what it is. And over the past, I'd say 6 months, that has actually increased. Used to, you know, if you didn't have a lot of people that, you know, that were in a place that they were interested in, that had been picked up, you weren't going to see anybody come, they wouldn't make that trip. But now that has increased at least a little bit, and, you know, ICE is a little more active with the people that, you know, they find out that they're actually, you know, here illegally. So, you know, but like I say, that has nothing to do with us and everything to do, you know, with the federal guys. We also, she talked about, there's a lot of things I had no idea, you know, I know it took a long time. I've seen people from Canada, you know, that actually, one was married to a law enforcement officer, and you know, they're trying to get married, get their stuff right, and she couldn't even get her documentation to be here, you know, to get that done, and her stuff was running out. So, you know, it's a mess all the way around, no doubt about that. But one of the things that she was talking about, and I do get them, there's an attorney in Charlotte. I've never seen a local attorney actually send me anything, but for somebody that has actually been involved in a crime that was assaulted, like, you know, let's say a boyfriend beat a girlfriend, and, you know, she is an Hispanic lady, and she actually testifies in court, does everything she needs to do to accommodate, you know, this gentleman or whoever it was that assaulted her being put, you know, that she got hurt. If she works with law enforcement on that and will testify in court, they can send, and what's it called, Alan?
U-visa.
A U-visa. And that will actually let us, I can fill that out as the sheriff and, you know, and answer all the questions that are there and say, yes, you know, she did do everything that she was asked to do. She, you know, worked with law enforcement. She went and testified against the individual that actually committed the crime. And I don't know if you can tell me or not how quick that helped, but it actually, allegedly, you know, should help her obtain her status more quickly, you know, because they know she is not, you know, she did exactly what she was supposed to do as a part of the victim in a crime in the state of North Carolina, and that helped her out. That actually, 2 minutes. Good.
It takes about 5 years, by the way.
That long?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I didn't know that.
That was for her.
It took her 5 minutes to say that. I got
Her 2 minutes was 5. That's right.
But you know, but that is kind of where you know, we're at. You know, and that would be the only way that, you know, that our office would come in contact, you know, with someone like that. That, you know, that we actually, even though we didn't initiate it, it was kind of initiated by the contact we had. Now, I will tell you this, you know, I don't let people from the United States drive without a driver's license. And I won't let anybody else drive without a driver's license. If they get stopped, they actually get a ticket. That's the law. That's the way that works. You know, but they won't go to jail unless they're driving on a license revoked. They're going to have to go over to the courthouse or to the detention center, and they will post a bond. You know, just because if they're run and that comes back before that, but you know, those bonds are quick. By the time they're run, you know, it could come back to the paperwork, and if they were asking for hell at that point, we would, you know, hold them for that trial. That does not happen an awful lot, I can tell you the honest truth. So, I guess, I know that's not a lot, but you would think we would have, I think you know, everybody thinks we have a whole lot more to do with that than we do, and we don't. You know, they're people just like us, and we treat them just like us. And until something shows up that's different, you know, where they have committed a crime or violated something else, and somebody lets us know, then, you know, they're just as they won't have anything to worry about. And, you know, and like I say, I wish there were more people here that could hear that would know, because I think it's got to be a terrible way to live, thinking every day that I know there's some high school kids that, you know, that have been in trouble here lately, that their parents won't come to the magistrate's office to bond them out or help them out because they're in fear of the fact that if they go and they're not documented, they will go to jail. That is not true unless they have committed a crime and they have been arrested. And then at that point, they very well could. So I hope that doesn't shed a lot of light on it, but like I say, that is truly kind of our, you know, there's not a policy on that, but, you know, we do what the federal government asks, and that is the way that, you know, that we operate, and it's all through the fact whether they're in custody or not. So hopefully that'll answer a little bit of your question, but we'll see about that when we get through. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tess. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheriff, I always love to do this. I was asked to talk a little bit about how immigration affects Dare County's economy. And what I can really speak about basically is how it's effective in the summertime. And all of you know, sitting in here tonight, what we have here in the summertime with our visitors that we are trying to accommodate. Largely, I remember many years ago when we first moved to the Outer Banks, every March we would have just many, many college students would come to the door of our businesses and be looking for summer jobs. Well, we don't see that as much anymore. And I think part of that piece is because it's so expensive for them to come down here and work in the summer to try to make money to go back to school in the fall that they're working in other places. So, but there is the program that is the J1 visa, and there are a lot of foreign students that are coming here in the summertime that are working. Now, these visas are time specific. They have a begin date and they have an expiration date, at what time these young folks would have to go back to their countries. This summer there were students here from many, many countries. We had some folks with us from Jamaica. There also is that HB2 visa, same thing there. They have temporary visas that will allow them to come into the country and to work for time specific, and then they have to return and go home. But if you would look around the Outer Banks this summer, and for the many summers in the past, we see the help wanted signs everywhere. And even folks with young folks that we have coming in the summer that are the students that are coming here to work in the summer and then going back to their countries, we are still looking for help in the summer to accommodate our visitors and to accommodate our economy in the summer. It's a learning experience also for your staff that is here locally, because they get to learn from the others and their cultures and so forth. And that's part of this program. You know, a lot of the people the businesses that bring the students over, like for example Food Line, if you will, they're sponsors, if you will, and there's companies that work with these companies to bring them over, and there's criteria. They will call and check with the employers to find out what these students are doing, what the jobs are. They also want them to be out touring around and learning about the Outer Banks as well, or wherever they are in the United States. It's also a learning experience for them. So in speaking of how it affects our economy, it does affect our economy, particularly in the summertime, and us being able to have enough people to accommodate the workforce that we need in the summertime on the Outer Banks. You know, that's, we would love to see more of our own college students come into work as well, because there's plenty of work for everybody. But I do think it's been a good opportunity for these students. And actually, we have really had good experiences. And again, they're all with the proper paperwork. It's all, you know, vetted through these companies that bring them. And also their sponsoring companies that bring them over here are also responsible for their well-being as well. Thank you.
My name is Jessica Loza. My parents were German immigrants, so that's why I have the name that looks like Luz, that's pronounced Loza. I've done a few of these presentations before, and at the end, people are looking kind of glum and saying, well, what do we do? What can we do? And the legal obstacles are overwhelming, and the political discourse is at best discouraging. But yes, you actually can help, and you can do it in small and meaningful ways. To begin with, our immigrant community needs to know that people like you care. That's really key. Don't avert your eyes. Don't wonder, what am I going to do? I don't speak Spanish. You can show you care. There are copies, probably they're all gone already. The First Flight High School students did an article on DACA students because there were some right there in high school, some students that I had in elementary school that I've known for 12 years. And they published an article about how it affected current high school students. And I have notes here. I'm going to quote from one of the students here. She was my student. She gave her name out too. She relates the pain she felt when the newsletter came out in September. Goes on to say this is not the first experience she had with public opposition of her immigrant status. She says, one time we went into this restaurant and there was a big, huge family. And they were like, oh, the wetbacks are here. And they got up and they didn't eat. They were like, we're not eating where all these illegal people eat. Let me ask you, if you were sitting at a nearby table, what would you have done? Would you have said anything? Would you have tried to pretend nothing was going on? Would you have offered any words of encouragement? Obviously nothing happened with this family, but that's what I'm talking about. We're people here. We can do little things like that. That was a real thing that happened to this girl who was my student back in 4th grade. At the end of the article, she says, and I'm reading her exact words, I want the community to know that for us, it's not easy coming to school every day or just walking out in the community knowing that we weren't born here. For them to realize we are not a threat, that we're people just like that. It's just that we weren't born here. But we have rights as humans. We just want a better living and for our dreams to come true. And we want to show the American society that we can do it too. So as we work towards a legal solution, we can walk the walk in our daily actions. 2 years ago, a powerful book came out called Silent Voices. It was a photo documentary of everyday lives of the homeless. It was written by a psychiatrist in San Francisco who wanted to see how his patients were actually living. He went out and lived in the streets all day, every day. And he did come home and take a shower and sleep at night, so he realized that it was only half of his life that he was doing this. But in the process, I think he did it for about a year, he got to know people. And he says, these are human beings with a lot of the same hopes and feelings, joys, frustrations that the rest of us have, he says. I want to help readers see that when they pass someone on the street who is sleeping or speaking Spanish, they should try to remember that person has a story. That's a real person that is living in this community with us right now. So if you see a family out shopping or speaking Spanish to your children, do you avert your eyes? Do you wonder what to say because you don't speak Spanish? You don't need to. Just smile. Compliment the baby's pretty eyes. Share a kind greeting. Acknowledge their humanity. Make their everyday life a little brighter. Think about that student of mine who says it's hard to go to school every day. Make her life a little brighter. It sounds saccharine, Pollyannic, but it's real. Smiles are the universal language. You can make a difference every day. If you have a valuable resource called time to spare, you can volunteer. Go to the school nearest to you and see how you can help. There may be an elementary school teacher with English learners in her class who needs someone to read to them while she's teaching the rest of the group. It means a lot to these kids to get extra attention. Not only will you be acting as a role model to every student in the class, some of whom may be hearing disparaging remarks about immigrants from their parents or on television. So you could be the alternative. You can volunteer to tutor students after hours through the family literacy program. If you're more comfortable working with adults, there are opportunities for you to help them learn English through the Dare Literacy Council. These first two options are entirely within your control, and I know David is going to suggest some more, and then we're going to open it up to questions. Your third option, which is a little more complex, is engaging in polite discourse with people with opposing views. Getting into a tit-for-tat argument will only solidify convictions on both sides. Just as we need to openly acknowledge and embrace the humanity of immigrants we see out and about in our community, we need to acknowledge the fears that underlie much of the hate talk, the name-calling, and the accusations. So I was thinking about language. There's a linguist called Locke who talked about how language is very important. And if you just use logic and you don't address emotion, you don't get anywhere. So I was thinking, I didn't reread his book, but I read through a few misconceptions that I had on a previous presentation I did, and I'll read this. So I was thinking through how could you start a conversation and not just have it be, yeah, but. You know, so these are some of my thoughts that I came up with this morning. Here's the statement. If they want to live here, they should speak English. So what do you say? I agree with you. To succeed in this country, it's essential to master the English language. Do you know it can take up to 7 years to do this? Did you know the demand for English language classes far exceeds the demand? Speaking 2 languages is always better than speaking just 1. You're acknowledging what they're saying, and then that may or may not get you anywhere. But you know, it might be able to get you to getting somebody to volunteer to help somebody learn English. Here's another one. Immigrants work for less and drive wages down. My response would be, I know it's frustrating to see wages stay stagnant. Teachers didn't get a raise for 10 years. It's actually the employers who set the wages, though. I can't imagine anyone saying, please pay me less. I don't need the money. Pay me less than the other guy, I'll work for you. That's the employers that are setting the wages. It's like the stock market. Here's another one. They're bringing crime and violence to our country. I would say, yes. Images and stories of violence and random attacks are horrifying. I find them gruesome as well. They're enough to make anybody feel fear. Did you know that more crimes are committed by people who were born in this country than by immigrants? Do you know more terrorist attacks have been committed by, excuse me, older white men? Than by immigrants? During the last 25 years, when the numbers of undocumented immigrants almost tripled, the FBI reported a decline of 48% in violent crime. Apologies to the older white men in this audience. We're probably going to have to vet you all a little bit. Here's another one. Okay, I'm leading into my own remarks here. We need more extreme vetting to prevent these crimes. My response would be, yes, it'd be great if all violent crimes could be prevented for sure. Did you know that your chances of being murdered by an American-born citizen are 252 times greater than your chance of dying in a terrorist attack perpetuated by a foreign terrorist? Right now, it takes 18 to 24 months for a potential immigrant to pass through the current vetting, screening, and background check. And my last, I could go on forever, but my time's probably running out too, and I have to give David some of my time. There's another, they don't get taxes. I'm tired of paying for them to collect benefits. Donna referred to this. I just had my windows washed today, and I got the same guy I had last year. And I think I had the news on or something, and he's saying, I'm tired of all these undocumented people. Why don't they just fill out their documents? So my son said, he's here. It's the same guy. So this time he was ranting about the difficulty he had collecting his unemployment because window washers don't have a lot of work in the wintertime. And he was telling me how he had taken on this lady and he called and he got all mad and he said, and then I just said, I bet you all those wetbacks are getting all the money that I'm not getting. And my son's over in the other room saying, he didn't say anything to me left. He says, I heard everything he said. That guy just won't change. But maybe you could say something. Maybe, I didn't try with this one. He was too hardcore for me to even try to be nice. But you do have to choose your battles. This is once a year I got the same guy. What bothers me, this is what I would say. What bothers me is when the richest in our country get the biggest tax breaks. Everybody, including immigrants, pays sales tax, excise tax, and property tax, whether it's through rent or purchase of real estate. In North Carolina alone, undocumented immigrants paid $277 million in 2015 in state and local taxes. Approximately 50% of immigrants pay income tax. Employers are required to deduct payroll taxes, even if the employee is not a citizen. The IRS estimates that undocumented immigrants and their employers paid $13 billion in payroll taxes in 2010. And they will not see one single dime of that. That's coming to me, my Social Security check, or to you. It's not going to them. It's $13 billion. They don't qualify for welfare, food stamps, unemployment, or Social Security. The only benefits in the U.S. for all residents are education in high school and emergency medical care. So these are just a few examples of the little things you can do to respond. The idea is to acknowledge the fear or the distrust behind the misconception before providing opinions or facts to counter the claim. Logic alone won't do it. Empathy might. Thank you.
If a religious community is healthy, regardless of its ideology or its theology, if a religious community is healthy, it is an empathy factory. It is teaching us that we are related to one another, regardless of what the theology is. It is teaching us that every human being has worth and dignity, regardless of what the theology is. That's one of the things that religious communities can do. The second thing that we can do is be an incubator for courage. Because those conversations are hard, and they don't always work, and empathy doesn't always work, and people do not always respond well to your well-placed objection to their concern. What gives you the courage to do that? If you know that there's this community that has your back, that can help. But there's something more that's happening there too, because the question that comes up, it certainly does for me, why should I? Why should I take that risk? And you get the answer on Saturday or Sunday or Friday, depending on your tradition and where you go. You get the answer to that. What does the Scripture tell you about the worth of every person, regardless of what Scripture you are reading? What did God tell the Hebrew people, the nation of Israel, about welcoming the stranger, as Father Phil brought up for us? What did Jesus tell us about who our neighbor is? So that invitation is there, but there is also behind it a little bit of a push. It says, well, comfort is good. It's nice to be comfortable, but that's not actually why we're here. So there is that invitation that can happen. The second thing that our religious communities can do, and I'm starting at the shallow end of the pool, because these are things that our religious communities can do for us regardless of what our position on immigration issues is, on the legality, on the documentation, and on the process and what the process ought to be. So the next thing that our religious communities can do, regardless of how we feel about those things, is keep present the risk to our very soul of objectifying other human beings, of treating some human beings as worthy and other human beings as unworthy. That's a risk to them, but it's a greater risk to me. The loss of self that happens when I do that is enormous, and our congregations can teach us that and remind us that there are not undesirable aliens. There are human beings. And again, regardless of my feelings about why they are here, or how they are here, they are human beings, worthy of being treated with the same dignity as every human being. This is important at the other end of the opinion spectrum as well. Because it is very easy for some of us, and I count myself among them, who think that our system is designed to produce undocumented immigrants who are forced into being economic cogs in the wheels without the ability to actually protect themselves. I think the immigration system is designed to do that. And a lot of us who feel that way can fall into the trap of dehumanizing from the other direction. Someone who has immigrated to this country, regardless of documentation, is not a problem. They're not a charity case. They're not just someone who needs help or protection or, worse yet, rescue. What they are is another human being, worthy of the same respect and the same treatment. So from either direction, our churches and our congregations can remind us that people are not economic units. They are something more than that. And it's hard to get out in the world and say that, but the church is of necessity a countercultural institution. So that invitation is there. So that's at the end of the spectrum where we haven't even talked about what we think should be happening about immigration and what some of the things they can do. Another thing that religious communities can do more easily than individual volunteers can do is what we're doing right now, is to pool our resources and create opportunities for education, opportunities for people to learn things that they didn't know before, and to find out why they should be interested in this kind of issue at all. And so that's one of the important things that we can do, and really helping people understand what the climate for immigrants, documented and undocumented, is here in this community that is beloved to us. What is it really like? What does that invite us to do? And then, if you begin to think that perhaps I want to be involved not just in the humanizing treatment of people and the care for people, you can consider the possibility of organizing to engage with issues around immigration. Some religious communities are already doing this, and others are considering it all over the country. What can we do to help make this process more reasonable? What can we do to help people be safer? Are there policies that we might advocate for within the limits of what's appropriate to us as a religious community? Those limits, I understand, are about to change. It's important to remember that vulnerability in our communities is not limited to undocumented people. As Tom was saying earlier, often people have the misconception that everybody who does not look like a white European descendant is an immigrant and is an undocumented person and is a risk and is a danger. And that feeling is being ratcheted up in our country right now. So remembering that this is not limited to folks who are undocumented, but the risk is there for everybody. What can we do? How can we get engaged? I would suggest that it is important that your community actually have a conversation together about what level of engagement feels right to you. What can we do? Are we best at the human services end, where we're making sure that people are fed, where maybe we're helping people get rides so that they're not driving illegally, where where maybe we're advocating for mass transportation because we don't like mass transportation here because we like things to be a little rustic and individualistic, and that's wonderful for some of us, but for some others of us, it's a problem. Could we perhaps think about whether that needs to change? Could we think about it together? Could our religious communities motivate us and help us organize to do that? Another thing that we can do is foster those opportunities. The religious communities can foster those opportunities to be of service. And we can move from doing it as individuals, which I think many of us, probably many of you in the room right now, are already volunteering in some way to be of service to those. But our religious communities can help us connect organization to organization and mobilize more people at a time. Bring emergency folks out if something is needed. This is important to me. The thing that makes our religious community's involvement in this different from me just deciding as a volunteer that I want to go out and get engaged in some way is that if we're doing it as a religious community, we have the opportunity to come back for reflection. What are we learning out there? What are we experiencing together? What is it telling us about our neighbors? What is it telling us about ourselves and what we might do? That's another thing that we are uniquely, as religious communities, we're uniquely situated to offer ourselves and each other. Some of us have space that we can offer for events, for education events, for events like this one. Thank you very much, Father Phil. And that becomes another resource that we have. This is something actually that I want to ask you about to see what kind of ingenuity there is in the room. What about a cross-cultural multilingual Bible study class? Could that happen someplace with a couple of people working together? What about an opportunity for a social event that is intentionally a cultural exchange? We'll show you something of ours if you'll show us something of yours. And turn back and forth and recognize again that people are whole people. They have something to offer the people, the rest of the people as well, not just problems or people with problems. Then you get to the scary part for some of us. I happen to belong to a religious tradition, Unitarian Universalism, and our Unitarian Universalist Association a few years ago made an intentional association-wide decision to align ourselves with what's called the New Sanctuary movement. Not everybody is going to do this. It isn't in keeping with some religious traditions at all, and for others it's just not what we do, and for others we just don't talk about that kind of stuff. And our tradition does, I'm fortunate in that. What it calls us to do is to leverage our power as religious communities, and religious communities in the Southeast have clout. To leverage our own clout and power and our privilege, the fact that we are safe. When I go into the sheriff's office, I am not afraid that I'm going to be arrested because of my status. ICE, I can put my fingerprints down and ICE is not going to call. That gives me the opportunity to be an advocate in a way that a person who is undocumented can't. So leveraging both power and privilege is something that we can do on behalf of marginalized or vulnerable people. In some of the things that are happening in some places around the country that I know about are organized efforts around public policy, things like policing and how long does somebody stay, and what are the rules? And is it possible that some of the rules that are applied even-handedly have uneven results because of the status of people who are involved? Advocating, this is the handwritten notes. Other things that religious communities can do is acknowledging in a large way the humanity of underserved populations. So when something happens in the community, when a community, I believe Mary Jo had a story about this, a community in the Midwest losing a huge number of their people all of a sudden because of a raid, do the religious communities come out and light candles and stand vigil for them in the ways that we do sometimes for other things, for other events that happens. We acknowledge that as our loss as well as the people that we knew. There are possibilities there for connecting. A congregation actually that I served in California connected with a group that was going to the Immigration Detention Center and helping people get phone cards, helping people get transportation to meet with their relatives who were staying in those, who were incarcerated in those centers, helping people communicate and get back and forth, and supporting the families who are struggling because someone has been incarcerated. So those are a few of the kinds of things that can happen. And I think that I'm going to stop there, because the next step out is a kind of advocacy that most of us will never be called on to do. Some of our congregations have opened their doors specifically to people who are under threat of deportation, who have citizen children, who have a good case for remaining in this country, and who are willing to put up with the discomfort of living in a place that wasn't designed for people to live in. It may be that some of us are called to do that, even in our homes. But that's a further step. And we're talking about those things tonight. One of the things that is lifted up for us often as a reminder is to always accept the leadership of the community that is most vulnerable. When we go in, we don't actually know what they need. Right? The folks in the community know what they need, and we'll tell the folks who come in wanting to help what it is that's needed, what kind of advocacy, what kind of service, what kind of anything is needed. So accepting that leadership and acknowledging that it's not our prerogative to do what ought to happen. So that's an important reminder that comes. There's more, there's much more. So, but I want to leave there. And just acknowledge that what we are doing, what we're hoping to do as religious communities always, is to lift up the highest and the best that we know, to connect with each other, to connect with other human beings. And if that reminder continues to go on, it doesn't actually matter what our issue position is. It changes the way people are treated, it changes their experience. And I hope that we can do that. I'm going to transition toward Wayne, who is going to invite questions and things like that. One of the things I invite to share when he starts doing that is there anything that your community is already thinking about doing that connects with immigrant communities? And is there anything that you think they might do? So any ideas that you have would be good. But there are also time for questions. Thank you.
I think, was that the presenters would maybe bring their chairs here so that they could be facing folks. So, Chairman, would you move your chair and you could just be facing them, that's all. And I will bring, by the way, we are on schedule. This is the question and answer period. Right on schedule. So if you have a question, I will bring a microphone to you so that your question can be heard. And I knew some people had some. We knew we were scratching the surface of a huge topic tonight. And we hope, we trust that we did it justice. We did our best job of it. And the North Dare Ministerial Association, I think, is proud to anoint, like Father Phil, to kind of hold this thing together, which he did. The presider, president of the Ministerial Association, Keith Doughtie, is in the back, and there are some other Ministerial Association members. We, as we were planning, were very cognizant that we were coming from a religious perspective, which is what David's wonderful words were about, reminding us that we're a different breed. So, questions?
If we want to help someone who is illegal, how can we start?
Say undocumented.
Undocumented. And I'm big on that. Is there anything local that is offered to that someone can prepare for citizenship.
Why don't you direct it, who do you want to answer that?
I'm my attorney here.
Well, so now you specifically mentioned, as far as citizenship, their literacy council, one of the things that they do as part of their English lessons is they actually do help people study and prepare for their citizenship exams. So that's something that, so you would be helping someone learn English while also helping them prep for their citizenship exam. Because part of the citizenship exam is pretty much an English exam. They need to be able to speak English proficiently, and so that's something that you could certainly help with. Mano a Hermano has been doing a lot more this year by way of community outreach, and so one of the things that we're really trying to do is create a list of people who are willing to help in some way, shape, or form, and then figure out, okay, so we have this many people who want to do X, who want to do Y, who want to do Z, and then shape programs that way. So, I mean, you can certainly reach out to me, and then certainly reach out to the their literacy council. What just I know you were speaking on what people can do. Can you think of anything else off the top of your head?
Well, depending on where you live, I mean, helping children, you can go to any of the schools and the schools. Individual classroom teachers are always looking for volunteers. And I think that provides a good role. But that's another thing that you can do right off the bat.
And then this will be my plug for Mano a Hermano Family Literacy Program. We do so. This is a program through which one of the main things that we do is we provide home-based tutoring to kids K through fifth grade. The primary reason being that the parents most often don't speak English, and so they can't help the kids with their homework. So by helping the kids, you're helping the entire family, pretty much. So that's kind of my plug and my call for volunteers, because we always have kids on the waiting list. We have about 40 children on the waiting list right now that need to be paired with volunteer tutors. You do not have to speak Spanish. You do not have to have any prior teaching experience, although we have lots of retired teachers that volunteer for us. So we provide trainings for you and everything else. So that is another way that you could help. And several of our tutors are here right now, so if you had any questions, you could speak with them as well.
I also think providing rides, giving people rides. I mean, maybe, I don't know how you can coordinate that with when people are afraid to go there. It's just another option that we need to organize, but giving people rides so that they're not risking driving without a license to get to a doctor's appointment, not just to get to the courthouse, but that's really key. Transportation is a big issue, and it's a very important way to help people stay out of trouble when they're just trying to get through their daily life of dealing with doctors and teachers and everything else. So that would be another thing to do.
Hi, it seems to me that the driver's licensing is such a huge issue. And so if people are driving without a license and they have to get to work, then they get a ticket and they can't pay the ticket. Tickets can pile up and they have to go to court. So, but just to be clear, you were mentioning that an undocumented person can walk into the DMV and just get a license? But it sounds to me like you were saying you could walk in and so how can people get a license? If they just have to get drunk?
In North Carolina. When I first started teaching in Deer County, which was in 2002, you could get a driver's license if you were undocumented with your individual taxpayer ID number, which is a little bit the same number that employers use to take out the taxes that I was referring to. And then that opportunity was taken away by the state legislature in, I don't know, maybe about 4 years after, maybe about 2005, 2006, I'm not sure of the year. And so no, there is zero opportunity to get a driver's license in North Carolina.
Okay.
Other states you can.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the panel being here. You need to eat more pizza and drink more wine. I did want to mention, when you were talking about the different statuses available that people go through, you briefly mentioned TPS, and which is really under fire right now. The temporary protective status, what people don't always understand is that some of these people who have been so-called temporary protective status have been here now for about 15 or 20 years, and their life did not go on hold. So I just wanted to, it's not a question so much, it's just to bring out that point. Imagine if you just did nothing for 20 years because you knew you couldn't keep what you had, you didn't get an education, you didn't start a job, you didn't start your business, you didn't marry the girl you met because, you didn't start the family with the kids. Of course everyone did. So now these people are facing losing everything. And some of these people have children who were born here and are American citizens. And I'm from Maryland, and I remember when we worked very hard to get the driver's license in Spanish, the exam, and also that undocumented people would be able to get a license for our safety, nobody's else's.
Thank you, Harry.
Question?
I don't know if there is a program in the schools right now, because when you say it's difficult for the children to go to school emotionally, socially, are there any programs that are like diversity training and that type of program in the schools right now?
I've seen a huge change since I started teaching in Dare County schools in 2002 until I retired in 2016. In the beginning, teachers didn't know what to do. What do I do with them? Maybe they will leave when the bridge is done. And that has really changed. I can speak for probably all of the schools over the last 10 years. I think the fear that student is talking about is she comes from a mixed status family, so her little siblings were born here, and she's not. She's concerned about her parents. And if you're concerned about yourself and your parents, I don't really think there's much the school can do other than being very empathetic. And I have seen that level of empathy rise enormously over the last 10 years. And I've seen the willingness of teachers to learn strategies to reach the children and talk with the parents. And I have to give a lot of credit to the school system, how it's adapted over the last 10 years.
I'll also did someone here mention that they were counselor at the school? Or am I making that up?
I didn't say it.
Oh, okay, but you don't want to speak. That's fine. The other thing that I will add too, though, along with what Jessica said, my understanding is also that our new superintendent is very sensitive to these sorts of issues, and so I I think that there are parents that are raising these issues, and it might be something that we see more of in the future.
Phil, I'm going to let you and Mary Jo keep track of the time. I'm just going to bring the microphones around, so you be the bad guy. Emma, I really appreciated what you said about America's loving lines and chewing up. I understand now why so many people say part of it is just getting line. My question is, why are the lines so backed up? Why does it take so long for the wheel to turn? Why are Mexican officials, why are they 20 years behind in processing those attempts?
That is a great question, and I did not mention. So there are numerical limits to pretty much And I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but let's say, for example, they'll say, okay, so we're only going to give 50,000 visas to siblings of U.S. citizens this year. Well, a whole lot more than 50,000 applicants come in. So once they hit the 50,000 mark of visas to give out, the remainder just roll over to the next year and just keep rolling over to where you now have a 22-year backlog. Does that make sense? No, well, no, not to us. It doesn't make sense, but to them it does. You know, and then what we end up with is the backlog.
So who makes that kind of decision and why? The people we elect?
Congress makes the decisions, and I don't know why. I don't know why, but they set numbers to pretty much everything but but spouses of U.S. citizens, the unmarried children under 21 of U.S. citizens, and the parents of U.S. citizens who are over the age of 21. Those are pretty much the only categories that don't have limits. Everyone else has limits every year, and so that just keeps rolling over, and that's the backlog that we have right now.
My question is for the sheriff and maybe Alma, since you are an attorney on the Outer Banks. I want you to talk a little bit about the crime on the Outer Banks and Roanoke Island. One of the things we constantly hear is that our immigrants are smuggling the drugs in. They are the drug distributors. They are doing the major crimes on the beach. Can you all talk a little bit about that in terms of whether this is true information, not true information, proportionally what's happening with that population in terms of our crime rate and our drug problem on the beach?
I'll just make a quick comment. I mean, you know, Sheriff can speak more to it, but from my experience, from what I know personally as a criminal defense attorney, because that is the law that I practice here, the majority of the drug cases that I get are a bunch of white people. So, I'm So, I mean, you know, the sheriff might be able to speak more, you know, about where the drugs are coming from or who's bringing in the drugs. But as far as who I represent in court for drug charges, yeah.
I don't exactly, I wouldn't have the figures, you know, on the percentage, you know, or how many are actually charged, but she is right. You know, there's more white people here than there are Hispanic people. There's more white people here than there are black people. So naturally, we are arresting more white people, you know, for drug-related offenses than we are anybody else. But, you know, that's to a population thing. In different areas, but, you know, you're talking about here, in different areas, you know, the Hispanic population is very active in meth, in the producing of meth and the sale and stuff like that. But we're blessed here. We've not arrested a whole lot of meth here at all, which is great. You know, we are fortunate, you know, in that respect. We do have a terrible heroin problem, and it affects everybody. It doesn't make any difference what color you are or how much money you have or how poor you are, so that, you know, is not affected by that. But, you know, I would say, like I told you, there was 13, you know, Hispanics in jail awaiting that. I don't know exactly how many, but I'd say maybe, you know, no more than maybe 25 Hispanics that are in jail right now. The rest of that would be, we'd carry a population of around 87 to 90, you know, a day. So, you know, you can see that that's not the population that is in jail either. And truthfully, you know, the breaking enterings and stuff like that, which are, you know, our property crimes are probably the most prevalent thing that happens here on the beach. They truly are not involved in those crimes that very much. So,
Of those 13, could they have bonded out? It's my understanding
No,
that
they
without a
cannot.
driver's license, you can't bond out.
do what then?
Could they have bonded out of jail?
You said something about a driver's license
Well,
and it
it's
can't
my
bond?
understanding that they, without a driver's license, that there's no bail bondsman that's gonna,
No, that's
not the
That's
truth.
definitely, no, no ma'am. They'll come and bail anybody out of jail because they're gonna make money out of it. They don't care who you are. They're gonna get you out of jail.
Mary Jo, and I'm sorry to button here. What year, so the folks that are in jail right now that have ICE holds on them, they can't bond out.
Okay.
Because bondsmen will not work. The bondsmen otherwise will bond everyone out because like the sheriff said, they want money, right? However, if there's an ICE hold on the person, they know that ICE is coming to pick up the person. They're not going to get the money.
Well, they can't get them out
And so-
anyway.
right.
That detainer prohibits them from getting out of jail
Okay.
for anything. They're held until they decide they don't want them. Or they don't make the time limit.
We did have time for 1.5 questions. We're down to time for one more question.
I would just like to know if there are 13 who are in detention now, if ICE comes and gets them. And I remember from one of the other meetings we had, are they still in Georgia? Is that where they go from here? Or where do they go? And then we think about the support of the family that's left.
I would have no way to tell you exactly where they go because they're so, depending on, what location would bring them. Most of our stuff comes out of Cary, the people that come and get them. So I don't know if they actually go to Raleigh or other parts, wherever that may be. But wherever a federal facility would be the whole.
That's what I heard.
Yes,
Georgia
ma'am.
was one of the closer ones.
Right.
I bet you that our panel would be willing to stick around a little bit and answer your individual questions. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out this evening. And I want to thank Mary Jo Wagner for organizing this. And there was no way that I was not going to take all of those flyers out to churches. Mary Jo, thank you. And let's thank our panel again.